Hey everyone, so today we are going to be reviewing some of the hidden tips and tricks in the Genius Invocation TCG game. These are basically habits that I picked up in the game and I thought it was really helpful in terms of increasing my win rate, and these are also tips and habits that were not explicitly taught to us in the Genshin TCG tutorial. So I thought I'll just share with the gang here. If you have any other interesting hidden tips, hidden habits that were also not taught to us in the tutorial, let me know in the comment section below. And if you like what you see in this video, like and subscribe. And yeah, let's get into tip number 1. So tip number 1, did you know that you can actually look at the number of cards that you have and your opponents have left? So if you take your cursor and put it on top of the deck, this tells me that I have 25 cards left in my deck, and this tells me that my opponent has 25 cards left in their deck. The reason why this is so important and this is so useful is because essentially, sometimes when you're in round 5, round 6, you are perhaps desperate for a certain card. For example, in this particular Sino Burst team, maybe towards the end of my round 5 and round 6, I might want to look for a Sino Specialization card, I might want to look for a Skyward Spine, I might want to look for a couple of additional Electro Dice, right? So how does that help me? Essentially, by looking at the number of cards I have left, it helps me to calculate the odds of drawing into those cards. So maybe I can use the likes of Strategize in order to lean my deck, increase the chances of drawing it, right? If I know that my chances of drawing a Skyward Spine or of drawing the additional Electro Dice is very high, I will basically play Strategize. But then at the start of the turn, or rather at the start of my game, if I'm at round 0, and if I know that I don't have any Skyward Spine in here, or if I don't have the card I'm looking for in here, the chances of me drawing into them is actually very low. So it does help you to think about, hey, do I want to play my Strategize now? Do I want to play Liban in order to draw more cards? And what do I want to do in order to get to the cards that I need? So I do think that this is a pretty nifty trick that we didn't actually learn from the tutorial. On the other hand, it is also helpful because if you know the number of cards that your opponent has left, and if they play a typical deck like, let's say, Ayamiya, OTK, or if they play the Geo Magu Genki, essentially there are some key cards that they need, right? For example, Kole always wants a specialization card. If they are in turn 5 and they haven't played that card yet, and if you think you can die to that card, essentially you can preempt that they have that card, and you might want to heal up your characters first to a range that is out of the kill zone for their Kole. So yeah, this is tip number 1. Do look out for the number of cards you have left, look out for the number of cards your opponents have left, because it is very useful for you to plan ahead essentially. So in tip number 2, we have the maximum number of dice. So according to Appropriate Slime, or also known as Ether Z in Genshin, the total number of dice, or rather the highest dice count that we can have in TCG is 16. So what does this mean? This means that if you are trying to set up for a huge turn, do not overextend the amount of dice that you are trying to set up. Do not play too many parametric transformers, do not play too many Paimons, do not play too many Libans, because the maximum number of dice that you can get is 16. So according to the community, the total number of dice that any person can theoretically have is actually 18. Someone did the maths further down in this subreddit page. So Chizik Quinn actually said that, hey, I tried to create 18 dice through the use of all of these different steps, but actually the total number of dice that they did create and did receive was 16. So what this means is that if you already have 16 dice, do not flex on your opponent, do not try to use an extra elemental dice card to generate more dice, because you already have 16, you already have enough dice to deal about 22 damage or so. Someone else also did the maths on the subreddit page. But yeah, 16 is the max number of dice that you can have, so do not overextend, do not go over that. So according to another Reddit member, yeah, if you use Noel, this would essentially deal a total of 22 damage to your opponent's team. So I don't know how often anyone can consistently get 16 dice in total. I don't think that's going to happen too often. But yeah, if it does happen to you, congratulations to you, but do not try to get 18 dice. So in my next tip, I just want to share about how important it is for you to keep track of your opponent's dice, the number of dice that they have left for the rest of the round. This is super important because it can help you to understand a couple of things. It can help you to understand if your opponent is going to attack you another time, therefore dealing more damage to you and therefore getting one step closer to unleashing the burst. It can also tell you whether your opponent is trying to set up and therefore end their turn and therefore can go first in the next round. It can also tell you if your opponent is able to switch to another character and therefore not take any elemental reaction damage. So I'm going to give an example of how I forgot about my opponent's dice count and how I forgot about keeping track of my opponent's board state in one of my previous gameplay video. So I've already spoken about this gameplay video once. I've already reviewed this particular match in my previous deck tag for the Mona, Keia and the Luke deck. But I just wanted to go through it again because I think this is super helpful in this particular video. Essentially, this is round 1. My opponent started with Razor, attacked with Razor 1 to Mona, dealing electro damage, and then they switched over to Sucrose and they also attached the Nemo artifact on Sucrose, right? So they have 2 dice left and I have 7 dice left because I've hardly ever attacked yet. So essentially, with Mona, I am thinking, do I want to play my elemental reaction and therefore do more hydro application on my opponent's team? So my thinking here is that if I play my elemental skill, I will apply hydro to my opponent's Sucrose. They may switch out to another character, and if they do, because they have 2 dice left, right? So they can switch out to another character. If they do switch out to another character, Mona's skill will deal hydro application to the second character as well. But what I forgot is that my opponent has 2 dice left and they attached the artifact here. And therefore, the artifact allows them to attack for a cost of just 2 elemental dice. And this was actually a pretty costly mistake on my part because as you can see later in the game, which is around right about here. Where is it? So as you can see, after I pass back my turn to the opponent, they use Sucrose's skill to deal slow damage on my entire team. And Keia and Diluc now have electro application. And I was not happy with that at all because it means they're going to take even more damage from Sucrose, they're going to take more damage from Xingqiu, which means it's even easier for their Razor to take the knockout. So this was a huge mistake on my part because I did not keep track of their board state, I did not keep track of how many dice that they have left. I forgot that they could actually deal 1 more damage. So what I should have done is that instead of keeping Mona in, I should have swapped over to Keia and deal some sort of elemental damage so that I can start building Keia's burst instead. So yeah, remember how many dice your opponent has left. It is super important. Don't take unnecessary damage. It is not worth it. So tip number 4 is actually a follow-up to tip number 3. In tip number 3, we spoke about keeping your opponent's board state in mind, keeping the number of dice that they have left in mind, because it can tell you a couple of things. It can tell you if they're trying to attack, if they're trying to switch again, or if they're trying to set up once more. And the reverse is also true. Your opponent can also keep count of the cards that you've already played. They can look at the number of dice that you have left to try to figure out what you're trying to do as well. And therefore, in tip number 4, we want to explore the option of not playing your elemental dice so that you can play a game of bluff with your opponent. So in this particular scenario, right now we are using Fischl. We have 3 elemental dice left and we would like to play Oz, right? But the problem here is that we have 2 electro dice and we have 1 geo dice, and we don't have the 3rd dice in order to play Oz. We do have the electro dice in our hands, so there are 2 options for us here. We can either play this so that we can have 3 electro dice, or we can use this to transform our geo dice into an electro dice. My preference here is actually to use this card to transform my geo dice into an electro dice so that I can play Oz. The reason for that is because I don't want my opponent to know that I've already played an elemental dice. I want them to think that I still have 2 elemental dice left in my deck, because what this means is that if I ever go down to 2 dice left, my opponent cannot rule out the possibility that I have another dice in my hand and I can go for another attack. And in most instances, for example, if I'm Fischl, a 3rd elemental dice would be quite lethal because it means that I can sneakily pull my burst on them. So just to recap, don't always play your elemental dice. Sometimes it is better for you to hide the information that you've already used this by burning this card to swap your dice, your other electro dice, or your other elemental dice into the dice that you need. So yeah, don't always use this. Sometimes use it to convert your dice. So in tip number 5, I am once again asking our viewers to not be greedy with your dice, do not be efficient with your dice if it helps you to win the game. What I'm trying to say here is that do not be afraid of ending the round early if it helps you to win the game, even if you have 5 dice left. So I'm going to look at one of the gameplay videos that I've already published before on this YouTube channel, whereby I managed to beat my opponent in 3 rounds. And the only reason why I beat my opponent in 3 rounds was because I ended my turn with 5 dice left, and I ended my turn so that I can deal end phase damage to my opponents. So to give an example here, right, here we have my opponent at 6 HP. They have their burst set up, my Fisher is dead, my Kole is almost dead, my Sino could probably die to the end phase damage that they can deal. But here's the problem, right, or rather here's the opportunity. I can also kill them with my end phase damage, because essentially I already have Quicken activated. Ours would do extra damage from Quicken, Ours would do extra damage from the elemental reaction, and then Kole's burst will also deal enough damage to knock out Kating. So I recognize that threat, I recognize that opportunity. So what I did in this particular game is that I allowed my opponent to do whatever they wanted to do. Essentially, they play the burst, they kill Kole, they kill Sino, and then I could have been greedy here by trying to attack using Sino because I've got 5 dice left, right? And my opponent has 6 HP left. But what I did was that I ended my turn first so that my end phase damage dealers can deal damage to Kating before they deal damage to mine. So essentially, because I ended my turn first, Oz dealt 3 damage, and Kole's burst dealt 3 damage. If I hadn't done this, if my opponent had ended first, they would essentially kill my Sino because Kating's burst would deal 1 damage, and then their Oz would deal 2 damage to me due to elemental reaction. So because I ended early with 5 dice left in the bag, I won the game. So do not be afraid of ending your game early. Do not be efficient with it. Do not be efficient with your dice if it helps you to win the game. So that's tip number 5. So that's all of my tips for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like more of such videos, let me know in the comment section below. If there's any tips that you'd like to share with the group here, yeah, comment in the comment section below as well. And because all of you are so good and stayed to the end of the video, I just wanted to share one final tip with you. So if you are playing a sword character that has the BP sword attached, I can't remember what this is called, but this black sword attached, and if your character is not at full health, you can actually heal your character by hitting the cat in the cat's tavern. So I'm Kating, I am at 13k HP, I hit the cat, and I heal Kating for 1.3k HP. So yeah, this is bad for cats. Do not do this if you care about the cat's health, but yeah, if you are waiting for something for your friends to join you in the cat's tavern, and if you want to heal your character, that's what you can do. So yeah, that's a sneaky little tip, final tip for all of you here. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.